Listen, the right is steadily rising in Europe, a shift which could turn out to be a new political trend. But let's not jump to a conclusion. Let's drill down a little bit more to be really sure if this is actually happening. Is Europe really becoming right-wing? Unlike before, far-right parties are now getting government roles alongside mainstream right-wing parties. In some places, a few far-right leaders are taking power, while in others, more traditional centre-right parties are merging with the right-wing fringes that were once considered untouchable. For example, the support for the hard-right AfD in Germany is surging. In France, Marine Le Pen scored a record 41.46% at the presidential election held last year, while her far-right National Rally won 89 of the 577 parliament seats, which is about an 11% increase from the previous figures. Something similar also happened in Finland. The far-right nationalist party called the Finns, who largely campaigned on anti-European Union and anti-immigration agendas, became a member of the coalition government after 3 months of intense negotiations. The Netherlands is another European state that has shockingly swung to the right after the far-right Freedom Party, PVV, somehow won the largest number of seats in the national elections that concluded about a month ago. More and more right parties are also leading governments or enjoying significant participation in Sweden and Italy. So what really changed, and why is it happening at this time? Let's find out in the next few minutes. But before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell so you'll stay in the loop and be among the first to know when we publish exciting and thought-provoking videos like this one. Now, let's get into it. Since the Second World War ended, far-right parties have actively contested elections across Western Europe. But, of course, their efforts were grossly inconsequential. It wasn't until this century that they began to move from behind the scenes to the mainstream. And while there are several social, economic, political, and cultural causes for the current tilting to the right, saying which of them is the most important and can actually be incredibly difficult. But let's take a quick trip down memory lane to the first decade of this century, the financial crisis in 2008. Undoubtedly, the 2008 mess triggered an economic crisis, forcing the European Union and national authorities to implement austerity measures. Sadly, these severe economic policies led to an increase in the gap between the privileged elite and you and me, who make up the remainder of the population. And, of course, this left cracks, something which the far-right harnessed to their advantage to promote the dissatisfaction of those who'd been left behind. Social changes compounded this situation, further shrinking the formal industrial working class, which had traditionally supported left-wing parties. Cultural changes also played significant roles, especially leading to the spread of individualist and divisive views of reality across society, all of which the right wing had consistently continued to harness to their advantage. Somehow, the seemingly best explanation for this lies in the crisis of democracy. To be honest, we will agree that democracy today continues to look incapable of fulfilling its theoretical promise. Conventional democratic politics has given in to the interests of high finance at the expense of the people. As actual democracy progressively loses its power despite the untouchable large financial and economic corporations, the far right continues to exploit the popular disgust of the people about the overly privileged and corrupt political class. The far right constantly accuses establishment parties of not representing the true interests of the people while calling for direct political participation, asking the people to trust in charismatic leaders who can connect with them without intermediaries. Basically, the right wing actively wrote off the old political class for cronyism, nepotism, and supposed failure to solve social problems while promoting their core values. So what precisely are the core values of the right wing? See, the truth is the far right embodies the worst of the European ideologies. The right's message is based on 3 core ideas: anti-immigrant xenophobia, anti-democracy and ultranationalism, and lastly, anti-politician populism. To break this down, basically what the right wing does is offer its followers an exclusive identity, single out the supposed culprits, and advocate for simple and severe solutions, such as throwing out the foreigners and overthrowing the political class. Over time, the right wing's discourse and actions has metamorphosed into 2 major ways: outright rejection of non-European Union immigration, and, increasingly, the rejection of the European Union itself. Now, if you ask me, I'll say xenophobia is one of the leading factors that is offering the biggest electoral dividends to the right wing across Europe. They champion the narrative of the alleged dangers of immigration, especially Muslim immigrants who they depict as unimaginable opponents of Christians and Western civilization as a whole. They also blame immigrants for taking immense advantage of the welfare state, reintroducing diseases that have supposedly been eradicated in Europe, and more importantly, contributing to the rising crime rates across Europe. But are any of these true? Well, the people are seemingly taking this hook, line and sinker, and the results are the reflections of what we saw in the 2022 general elections across the European countries. Shocking, but can we say it wasn't expected? Well, to be honest, I'm not sure. But really, how worried should we be? What do you think? Well, what I think is that the electoral right wing, especially the far right, constitutes a major threat to liberal democracy across Europe. Of course, this threat varies significantly across the continent, but that doesn't eliminate the fact that it is threatening. And undoubtedly, the biggest threat comes when one far-right party holds a constitutional majority. A perfect example of this is what's happening in Hungary, where democracy, in all its intents and purposes, has been destroyed completely. Without the constitutional majority, the far right might also be doing a lot of damage, although they might struggle with larger political and legal challenges, just like what is happening in Poland. Italy is also experiencing an internally divided right-wing governance, which is somehow preventing their overall impacts, although their ideologies and intimidations can still be felt indirectly. Generally, the main impact of the right wing is indirect. And while we mustn't exaggerate how threatening it can be as it only increases its power, we must acknowledge that most right-wing, especially far-right parties, have only relatively become part of the mainstream political process. Gradually, they are becoming what they are supposedly against, with many of them failing in their first attempt at power because of their lack of skills and experience to fundamentally change the system per their recommendations. But because of how undoubtedly resilient they are, beyond learning from their mistakes, they also harness decades of mainstreaming and normalization to gain more skilled and experienced people. The right wing has also started collaborating more effectively and actively, both cross-regionally and cross-nationally, to strengthen its overall foothold across Europe. They learn from each other, they protect each other, and ultimately, they increase their capacity to govern. So yeah, the most recent patterns tell the whole story. The threat of Europe becoming right-wing is real, and the threat this poses to European liberal democracy is more real. As per the conversations among different political activists, there might still be time to mitigate the consequences. But really, what are the chances of Europe not tilting to the right? For a long time, opposition to immigration, Islam and the European Union is what united the right-wing parties across Europe, with newer causes also emerging, including, but not limited to, climate crisis, cultural wars, minority rights, and so on. And with the current cost of living crisis and the increasing news of possible recession in 2024, the appeal of the right wing is being further enhanced. And really, the plan is working. Italy, Germany, France, Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Poland, and a few other European countries are testaments to this, and proof that even more can be achieved when it comes to challenging the traditional party system. So yeah, I would love to know what you think too. Do you think Europe can eventually become right-wing with the far-right parties fulfilling their missions? With the recent stiffening anti-immigration laws across European countries, what other consequences could we expect as they continue to get more government roles? Do you think the left wing has truly overstayed their welcome and can now leave the scene? I would really love to know your thoughts, so please don't hesitate to share them in the comment section below. Trust me to engage with you as soon as possible. While you're at it, you can also check out more videos like this one on the channel, Declassified, where we go beyond the headlines to uncover the hidden truths that have escaped the mainstream narrative for decades. Please do like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you'll be among the first to know when we publish next. As always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye for now.